The year was 1987. The place was Louisville, Kentucky. Back in those days, the hottest club in town was called the Blue Castle Beer Depot, and the hottest act in town was called Max Potential and the Connecticut Blues Machine. It was 12 guys all playing the saxophone at once, while their leader, Max Potential, was a little guy in a tuxedo who just silently paced back and forth across the stage all night. It might sound pretty run-of-the-mill to audiences today, but back then, it was groundbreaking. They'd have the place packed to the rafters 6 nights a week. On that 7th night, little Max Potential was a deacon at the Greek Orthodox Church. He'd spend his Sundays helping with the Eucharist, while the owner of the Blue Castle, a fellow by the name of Torgo Flowers, spent the whole day hosing down the Blue Castle Beer Depot. He always said he was never quite sure what it was that people found so attractive about Max Potential and the Connecticut Blues Machine, but whatever it was, it attracted the dirtiest crowd in town. They'd leave a good half-inch of solid caked-on mud around every surface of the bar. The walls, the stage, even the underside of the bathroom sink. Then one day, tragedy struck.
I remember all the boys were up on stage with their saxophones, and when little Max walked out, the crowd went crazy. I mean, women were screaming, men were tearing their shirts off. People got so excited, they were puking. And but then little Max picked up a microphone, and the crowd went totally silent.
Yeah, he explained that he had been drafted by the United States Military Selective Services. He was going to war. People started crying. Seeing grown men fall on the ground and call out for their mommies. I guess he failed to tell the Connecticut Blues Machine because they all freaked out. One saxophone player took out a knife and actually stabbed another saxophone player. I mean, it wasn't to death, but he did give him a pretty good poke in the thigh, and he was wearing white jeans, so you can imagine the mess.
Honestly, I'm still confused about what happened to Little Max. I mean, 1987, 88, was like the only point in the last 50 years when the U.S. wasn't involved in any military conflict. And, it was also like 15 years after they ended the draft.
The Connecticut Blues Machine tried to carry on without Max Potential, but it just wasn't the same.
I remember they did a couple of shows with local weatherman Brian Branscombe. He'd come out and just pointed stuff on a map while they played. And people were furious. Somebody tried to light his ponytail on fire, and that was the end of Brian Branscombe and the Connecticut Blues Machine, thankfully.
Without Max Potential and the Connecticut Blues Machine, the Blue Castle Beer Depot went out of business in a matter of a few months. Over the next 10 years, that little storefront would be home to an endless parade of failed businesses. Nothing seemed to last for more than a year, until Caillou.
You know Caillou, right? The little bald boy, French Canadian, little fucking crybaby wiener. He was hot shit back then. All right, I don't know why they named a bar after him, but they did.
Caillou was a terrible bar. It had just pictures of that bald-headed little prick all over the place. Nobody ever wanted to be there.
Yeah, but you gotta remember, after September 11th, anti-French sentiments were, at an all-time high. No one wanted anything to do with anything French, and that included Caillou. They were getting threats, vandalism. Someone threw a flaming baguette at the window. They decided to change the name from Caillou to Kaiju.
With the new name came a new Japanese movie monster motif and a new clientele. Soon, every night of the week, the bar would be filled to capacity.
I remember people would show up as soon as the doors were unlocked. They'd be saying stuff like, "Where's the monsters? What are the monsters doing?" People were expecting some kind of a show. Greg just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Greg Welsh. Born in Hollywood, California, he moved to Louisville, Kentucky to chase his dreams of becoming a movie star. Years later, in his autobiography, I Did It My Way, the Greg Welsh story, he would write, "Growing up in Hollywood, everybody wanted to be a star. In Louisville, I had zero competition. I just had to wait for the opportunity.
He literally did just wait. He would walk around the neighborhood asking if anybody was making a movie. He didn't have a job. I don't know where he got his money.
Greg once told me that his family invented Fun Dip. You know, Fun Dip, that little pouch of like powdered sugar that you dip a little saliva-covered spit thing into, and it just this nasty, sugary thing comes out. I guess he inherited a bunch of money from it. Because I went to his apartment once, and it was nothing but Fun Dip. Like his pantry, his fridge, everything. It was all Fun Dip crap. I look over, and his mouth is just covered in blue dye from eating Fun Dip all the time.
Back in those days, he had long, wild hair and bell-bottom pants. He asked everyone to call him Dr. Groovy.
Greg seized the opportunity and began putting on free shows every Tuesday. But it wasn't the immediate success he had hoped it would be.
I remember Greg's first idea for a show was called Pac-Man Live. And it mostly involved Greg completely naked, but with yellow body paint on, and he would chase people around the bar making the Pac-Man noise, you know, the waka 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 waka.
People didn't really get what he was doing. He would eat cherries out of their drinks. Definitely got punched in the face a couple of times.
Then one day, inspiration struck. Greg was at the movie theater to see the latest installment of the Mad Max film franchise. While he waited in line for tickets, he saw two stray dogs fighting over a nerd's rope someone had dropped in the dirt. What if, he thought to himself, instead of two mangy dogs, it was a group of comedians, and instead of a dirty old nerd's rope, they fought over applause. Greg ran home without ever seeing the movie. The next week, he unveiled his new show, Thunderdome. Audiences went wild for Thunderdome. People were coming from New York, Paris, Dubai, and Greg was at the center of it all.
He quit going by Groovy Greg, and he started calling himself Mr. Famous. And he would wear a white tuxedo everywhere, and he was constantly spilling ketchup or gravy on it, and he would just throw it away and put on a new one.
See, back then, Greg was the only game in town. You know what they say about being on the game in town? Pretty soon, somebody else wants to have a game. Then there's two games in town. Then the only game in town is seeing which game gets to be the only game in town. It's a lot of games.
Bill Booch was a rich kid from New York City. His family invented the baby bottle pop. He started a competing comedy show called Fury Road. He took out a full-page ad in the Courier-Journal claiming that Greg Welsh was the inspiration for the TLC song No Scrubs. The audiences for Thunderdome got smaller and smaller. Greg started having a hard time booking the show. Meanwhile, Bill Booch was bringing in the major stars, Dane Cook, Etta May, Alonzo Hamburger Jones.
That's when Greg got into his goth phase. He started wearing all black, dyed his hair, started wearing eyeliner.
I remember he told me he wanted us to start calling him the Man of Constant Sorrow.
We all thought it was because of that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But he had never heard of it, never seen the movie before at all. Bill Booch started calling him the Soggy Bottom Boy, and the nickname stuck because it was perpetually soggy bottom.
Greg became even more goth. Newspapers reported he was seen only at night, often dressed as the Grim Reaper. On Easter Sunday, 2017, Greg was arrested when he was caught sneaking onto the mayor's property to paint all the Easter eggs black. The following week, for the first time in over a decade, there would be no Thunderdome. Welsh was released from jail the following week and went back to hosting the show immediately, but the damage was already done.
Thunderdome had the stink of failure on it. Greg couldn't book a hair appointment. It was over.
The city sued Greg for the loss of their Easter eggs, plus damages for mental anguish on behalf of the children of Louisville. It was a lot of money, even for the heir of the Fun Dip fortune. He was forced to sell everything, his limousine collection, all of his fine ceremonial robes. He even had to cut all his jeans and the shorts and sell the pant legs. He started starring in low-budget direct-to-home movie videos with names like Lightning Bowl and Rumble Round. Then one day, he just disappeared.
I remember one day realizing that Greg Welsh was just gone. And we were all like, what a relief. Now, I know that sounds terrible. I get that. But you have no idea how depressing it was getting. The last time I remember seeing him was in some made-for-TV movie called Storm Stadium. And the entire movie, he was visibly crying. Not just like a little misty-eyed either. He was sobbing so hard you couldn't really understand what he was saying. It was pretty hard to watch.
Meanwhile, Bill Booch was having troubles of his own with his show, Fury Road. Crowds were beginning to grow tired of the same old premise week after week, and Booch was desperate to keep them engaged. In November of 2019, Bill Booch announced on social media that the theme for his upcoming Fury Road competition would be fucked up food.
Oh my god, I was at that show. Oh my, yeah, they had the two biggest names in the comedy club circuit. Bam Margera and Logan Paul. Yeah, Bam, he came out there, didn't say a single word. He just sat down and he started eating this armadillo looking thing. Later somebody told me it was like a pangolin. And then Logan Paul comes out and he has this big bowl and he just starts ladling out this soup, and you can tell that's bat soup. And as they're both eating this on the stage, you can just see him getting sicker and sicker. And then before you know it, they're just coughing all over the audience.
In the following weeks and months, the largest pandemic in modern history swept the globe. Many were quick to blame Bill Booch and his comedy competition, but regardless of what role it may have played, live comedy would come to an end. For 2 long years, people would try to fill the void with live streams, comedy over Zoom, podcasts, and even blogs. Nothing felt quite like live comedy. And then one day, something incredible happened. A new venue opened its doors. The Planet of the Tapes.
I remember a guy runs up to me on the street, and he's screaming, "Greg is back! Greg is back! And he's doing Thunderdome again." Well, I just threw my briefcase into the sewer and never showed up to work again.
Over the next months, Greg Welsh brought back Thunderdome for a new generation to universal acclaim. On May 12, 2022, Greg took the format he pioneered to dizzying new heights when he hosted Thunderdome. Thunderdome. A Thunderdome-themed version of Thunderdome.
I am on this show right now, and it is blowing my mind.
Greg promised an all-star show, and he delivered. Every single performer brought their A-game, but the standout performance of that evening was Nathan P. Woodard.
Nathan P. made this fake documentary about the history of Thunderdome. It was completely insane.
People still ask me, why did you come up with the idea for that documentary? And I always say the same thing. I drank a bunch of cough medicine.
It was at that point the crowd went crazy for Nathan P. Woodard's fake documentary. They rushed the stage and carried it on their shoulders.
I mean, the sound of everyone cheering, it shook the building. It really had become the Thunderdome.